Hey everyone and welcome back to the garden. I don't know about you guys, but we've certainly had enough rain in May to more than make up for April, and we've had several really heavy downpours over the weekend. But I've used the time wisely to get some of the summer plants in the ground, and my thinking is, while we've got a few grey days and the ground's already really moist, it gives them a while to settle in before things hopefully get warmer next week. Fingers crossed anyway, but we'll see. Anyway, after the previous plants I talked about might have faced some supply issues, pink china, colocasia in particular, today I want to talk about a plant that you might be able to get hold of a little bit easier, a really easy to grow plant and a very handy plant, a foliage plant that can be used anywhere in the garden, especially those tricky shady dry spots, and that is Persicaria, particularly red dragon and purple fantasy. This is a red dragon here. If you're not familiar with Persicaria then, there's loads of different types, but for me personally these are my two favourites. And if you look closely at red dragon, you'll see the leaves can sort of start off green, but then eventually they mature to these dark sort of maroon purple arrow shaped leaves with the little silver chevrons on them. And if you look at these picture purple fantasy, you'll see they've got a slightly different leaf shape, but they've got that same chevron marking. They're just a really attractive plant. And whilst they do have small flowers later in the spring and summer, the main reason people grow them for is the foliage. And personally, I think they work great with all kinds of the jungle, tropical planting. They fit in well with the gunnera, tetrapanax, pretty much every sort of tropical plant, including the real sort of tropicals like your banana plants and the cannas. I just think the leaves work great together. But it's not just for tropical or exotic gardens. I think they would work well with a lot of other, say, cottage plants, more traditional planting, and just give that sort of exotic flair to it. They're a great plant. So whilst a lot of other tropical foliage plants, they might take a bit of extra care, they might not be hardy outside over winter, or they might just get too big for the space, Persicaria is absolutely perfect for those situations. They get to, roughly speaking, about 50 centimetres to maybe 80 centimetres tall, and then probably, if they're doing really well, around 50 centimetres to a metre wide. They don't get absolutely huge, and they're a great sort of filler plant. So putting around your larger specimens, putting at the back of the border just to sort of cover up the bottom of a fence, or even just to go in those awkward spots at the back of borders, I think they're absolutely great for that. So the first reason why I think they're an absolutely fantastic plant to grow is because of how tough they are. And firstly, I will start with a bit of a warning, they're related to knotweed. But that doesn't mean in any way that they're uncontrollable. Unlike the bigger varieties of knotweed that are a genuine problem, these are very easy to control. And whilst they do spread, that's definitely a benefit because you can split those clumps up and spread it throughout your garden. And we're not talking about a herbaceous plant that you can split every 3 years. These are a plant that you'll probably even get in your first year and definitely the second. From our old house, I think I had 2 or 3 plants, and when we moved I maybe took 15 with me. You can get absolutely loads from them, and they can grow very well from cuttings as well. So whilst they do sort of spread and form a clump, it's not hard at all just to get a spade or a trowel in there and split that clump up. They're not an invasive plant, and they're not a plant that's going to take over your garden, but they're definitely a good plant that you can split up yourself and use throughout your garden to keep that sort of consistent theme going, keep a sort of foliage sort throughout the garden without spending a lot of money. So they're a really easy plant to divide, whether you're looking to spread them throughout your garden, give them away, sell them, or you can even grow some divisions in pots as well. They do really well as a pot foliage plant, but they do generally prefer more moist soil. So that means if you grow them in a pot, just keep on top of the watering. The good news is you don't need to give these plants any kind of special care in winter, unlike a lot of tropical plants. They don't need to be dug and brought into a greenhouse, they don't need to be potted and brought inside. You can just leave them where they are and they'll be absolutely fine. So what you find in winter is the frost will just wipe out this top growth. As soon as you get the first sort of hard frost, it wipes it out completely. But you can actually cover what's left with a bit of straw, you can mulch it. Personally, I don't bother, and I've not had any problems with them coming back. They are really, really tough plants. And what you'll find is, come spring, they're actually one of the first plants to bounce back and to start growing again. They don't have a lot of heat requirements, like some colocasia and cannas. They can be sort of late May, even June before they actually get growing. Whereas with these, some of these have actually got planted in the ground, even after that cold winter we had. In February, we had the freezing weather for so long, but in March they were growing strongly again. Now obviously with the spring we've had this year, they soon got cut back to the ground and they are just now starting to come back again. But they're a plant that don't need a lot of heat to get going, you can reliably leave them in the ground. And for me, with a plant that has this sort of amazing foliage that you don't need to give any care to, it's absolutely amazing. And that's the reason why you can put them in your garden and not have to worry about them. It definitely makes a change to have a tropical looking plant that really wants to grow. And at this time of year, especially after the frustrating spring we've had, so many plants that need extra heat, extra care, and they're just starting to grow now really slowly. Whereas Persicaria is a plant that wants to grow. And if it gets a bit too big or a bit lanky for the spot you've got in mind, then what you can do is just chop it right back and it will grow strongly from the base. They're not a plant that you need to worry about, not a plant that needs a lot of extra care. You can just plant them and watch them do the thing. When it comes to care then, like with a lot of these other plants, finding the right spot does help, but Persicaria are generally very easy going. They can grow in most spots in most gardens. As long as the soil doesn't dry out completely, ideally give them a bit of shade, and they can actually survive in deep shade. So I've used them throughout the garden, mainly in this jungle clearing area we're in now. I use them at the back of borders or around plants. So plants that are going to take a few years to establish, the Persicaria is a good sort of filler plant that can just be dotted around them. And unlike a lot of tropical bedding style plants, you don't need to dig these up. So it can go between plants where the roots are maybe spreading into the ground. If you've got some palms like Trachycarpus or tree ferns, you don't really want to be disturbing the roots too much every winter sort of by digging up all the tropical plants. These you can just leave them in, they will cope with the sort of competition with other roots, and they'll do really well without any kind of care. I won't worry too much about feeding. If you've got good soil, that is pretty much all they need. But if you want to grow them at their absolute best, a good rich soil, lots of organic matter dug in, so that comes to the farmyard manure, the soil conditioner, anything like that, that's going to give them a good start. And if you can keep on top of the watering, give them a good bit of shade, you'll find you've got plants with better leaf colour, stronger plants, and they'll get even bigger. So it's just been a quick video today, partly because I'm actually getting on in my own garden here, making the most of it before the weather changes and the plants actually start growing. But also because there's a guy cutting the grass next door with a strimmer, it's really noisy, so apologies about that. But hopefully you can see why Persicaria will fit in great with your garden. Even if you don't necessarily have a jungle or tropical theme, they're just a really attractive foliage plant that does need a lot of care, that's reliable and can thrive in most spots. They're affordable. I can't recommend any specific supplies at the minute because a lot of the usual places are out of stock of a lot of plants this year, but they're pretty easy to get hold of and they're not expensive either. So personally, what I would do, if you're on an extreme budget, just buy one, maybe one of each, and you can split them up later this year or maybe next year. But if you've got the money to actually get them in the first place, I would probably get 2 or 3 plants of each, spread them round, and then going forwards every year, you can duplicate them again and again and have an absolute forest of Persicaria decorating your garden. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all with the next video on growing tree ferns in containers very soon. Bye!